False start. Okay, so I think we're on episode 3 here. We are talking about artist roles and responsibilities, how we kind of feel about that. We just watched like a 12-minute thing. It was like a supercut of different artists, and there's a professor, different people talking about what their thoughts on that was and what their thoughts about artist roles and responsibilities are in society. And so we kind of just have some of that to feed off of, and then our own personal practices and stuff like that. So that's what we're talking about today.
And I remember at one point, when I heard one definition, you were like, yeah, I want to make sure I was like, oh, there should be fun discussion. Because we probably have different ideas of the artist role.
Absolutely.
But which is good, because I think we each have roles for ourselves as well. And that's what we were talking just before we hit record, was sort of this idea of maybe the roles for ourselves as well. And yet there's many roles for different artists, right?
Yeah. Like that was the question you posed to me, was kind of like, do I see my role as an artist different than maybe what I would say, like, oh, that artist has a different role than I do, or...
Yeah. So what do you think?
I think it's hard to,
The reason I ask that is because there's different ways of art, right? There is art like as decoration, and we know, I have several friends that do art like more as decoration, right? They are things that would go on your walls. I have other friends who are artists who do work that is definitely political or abstract or conceptual, or so there's like all these different definitions of artists, I guess maybe actually I was more defining different kinds of artists rather than the role of the artist. I just realized that.
I think it's kind of the same thing, though, because I think that, so to answer your question, yes, I absolutely think that different artists have different roles that I respect, appreciate, etc. Because I don't think any one artist, I think it'd be really difficult for any one artist to fulfill all these roles that I would still fit into your creating art. Like, what you do is art, thus you are an artist. Because there's things like, even with our own practices and stuff, like, I don't really get political, I don't really get activist, and I think that's a super important role for artists to fill. It's like, obviously you can be an activist without being an artist, but I think as an artist, when artists do participate in activism, it's super important, and it's got it's not, I don't think activism in itself does not, to me, define what an artist should, every artist should be.
No.
Or do, but it's a really important thing that I happen to just not really do, that people like you and whatever else, that they do that thing in various many forms. It could take in the role of just redesigning a flag, could be activism right there, or it could be rioting in the streets with you could have visual art on you or not, or documenting that and editing and putting it out there somewhere.
Or doing graffiti.
Yeah, I mean the graffiti could be a form of activism for
You don't
sure.
think it was activism? When you were doing it? I mean, even just the way you described it.
Oh, when I was?
Yeah.
The very latter part, because when we talked a little bit about it last time, when we talked about relationship with environment, it wasn't as explicitly about, if someone was just walking by, I don't think they would have noticed. Mm-hmm. So it was much more of a personal battle and struggle, and my personal quarry with the city, and I explained that. The thing is that I like I said, anyone walking by wouldn't understand it as activism, but because I chose, I'm not doing anyone's private property, I'm only hitting city property. Why am I only hitting city property? It's because the city doesn't provide spaces for artists to work in that are safe. They're purposely going down to businesses that have paid artists. They're going to them and saying, can you paint over this because this spawns illegal stuff, which is backwards to me. That was my thing, was I'm only doing city property for those reasons, but I don't think anyone would have known that. I wrote, for the university, for the Sheaf, the U of S paper, I wrote an article that kind of outlined my...
It's called the Sheaf?
The Sheaf.
Oh.
Wheat sheaf. Yeah. So... The sheaf.
Yeah.
So I wrote like an article in there that kind of outlined that more, and then like I had an unfortunate circumstance of a I had a conversation in unfortunate circumstances while I was getting arrested the last time, but I had like a 2-hour conversation with the anti-graffiti unit, which at the time was Constable Lee Jones, who's not there anymore, but he was like the whole unit, it was just him. So we had a discussion about things and he just begged to differ, but I brought up all those points, like it wasn't like an ignorant conversation, I don't believe it was. So to answer your question, like yeah, it was in a way activism just because I reframed what I was doing, but it wasn't for the people or whatever, it was for me and for other people that were like me, but it was also something that in and of itself, in that one act, no one walking by could tell what it was about.
But but I don't think activism lots of times is necessarily recognized by someone immediately. Like I think a lot of activist art isn't necessarily something that is recognized either right away by someone looking at it and going, oh wow, that's like activist art or something.
Yeah.
And so I think even a lot of people who see mine, if it's not framed in a certain way, don't see it as that at all, right? So I think a lot of times activist art can be, subtle's not the right word because a lot of it's not subtle. I mean, even your graffiti, it's not subtle, but it doesn't have like a message that is like in your face message, but it's still something that is meant to, and by you, your placement meant that you in that way, in my mind, were then taking kind of an activist role in that bit. I know it's not how you would describe yourself though, but.
No, and that's the thing, I think until you posed that question, I just never thought of it as activism really, even though like if I really thought about the definition of that, and what I was doing, maybe that's the only time I've ever really done that.
So your role as an artist is, as John, what did you feel your role as an artist is?
Well, here we go. I feel like as an artist, I am only responsible to myself. That's like the role and responsibilities, that's why I kind of call it like, what is an artist's role and responsibility? To me, they go hand in hand. That I don't feel like I have a responsibility to anyone else. Before that, like I guess we'll talk about that Cronenberg quote a little bit, but even before I saw that quote, I already was like, I don't want to be responsible to anybody, and it was because of some incidences that I had with displaying my work that they got misinterpreted, people called me misogynistic, there was like very strong reactions to some of the work because I believe because it was misunderstood completely because that was not the intention of the work, but it was one of those, I don't know, I learned a lot with those experiences of trying to like let go and not, I never wanted to be responsible to an audience anyway. I wanted to communicate something. I wasn't going to communicate it, nothing I can do about that. But like, now even more so than then, because then I was making more social commentary at that time, more than, I was maybe equal. Really personal works for me and social commentary, and now I feel like it's way more personal, and more, I guess I do more design now than I did then too. And so, to me, it's just that I don't want to have any responsibility to anybody. I don't want to just put it up there. I want to just do it. And even when it comes down to things like use of materials, because sometimes it's like, is that going to last? Like, what if in a couple of years that dissolves or like I'm like, I don't care. I'm just like, that is part of the art to me, and it's not something that's necessarily, it's not meant to self-destruct or something, no. But it's not something I communicate to a buyer because I don't know what will happen with it. It's like that, like when we started talking about using oil paint, and you're like, wait, I don't know, can we use oil over acrylic or acrylic over oil? And I was like, I don't care. I'm just gonna do it because however it dries, I'll take a picture. And that's what that person's buying. They're buying it as a whole. Like I don't, if they put it in the sun versus if they don't put it in the sun for years, then maybe that'll have an effect too, right? Like if I don't put the right finish on it, if it's not UV protect, like it's all just part of, it is what it is, and I don't even know what it will be, and neither do you, and that's what you're buying, and I don't want to have a responsibility for that. You're buying what you see right now, and that's all that I can promise you. So, I mean, that has its own baggage and whatever.
So you don't even want to have responsibility for people who own your art?
No, I mean, I've never had anyone come back and been like, oh, it like fell apart. Like that's never happened yet.
Yeah, no, I'm just.
But I don't want to have. I just don't want to have any responsibility to anybody other than myself in almost any regard in life. So as an artist, like, it's kind of just like and that's why I identify with that quote so much. And since I'm bringing it up again, it was, I can't quote it verbatim anymore, but it was David Cronenberg.
Yeah.
To summarize, he said that, like, as soon as the artist, like, feels they have any responsibility to society or someone else or whatever, that they amputate their best tool they have as an artist. So he really believed in this. He had a longer explanation and a longer quote of just saying, like, having responsibility means you're giving up power, that you're already working, I think he said, in a restricted system, and that, like, you should be not giving away any power at all, and by being responsible to someone, you are. And that's part of why I think in my definition of art, which we'll talk about some other time, I use the word that I don't want to compromise. And I think being responsible to someone is a compromise. So that's why sometimes, like, doing a commission, that sometimes to me is outside of what I call art. To me, it's design work, or being a technician for somebody else. And then in that one moment, I don't consider myself an artist, where someone else might. Because I am being responsible to someone, I'm taking care of a client, I'm like, what if it's like a commission that I don't have any interest in doing really, like for my own purposes? I feel like I'm droning on. But
No, well, I guess whenever I do activist art, which most of mine always has that component, it's still, and maybe it's because it is really personal, like yes, it has an activist component to it, but it is my art, my aesthetics. I don't feel I compromise how I would make something or how I would do something, because it also has an activist element to it. Like, my aesthetics are still what they are. They don't change. My decisions on what to use, how to use it, materials to use, how much skin to show, how much not to show, how anything is, I do it, I make it, I do it as I want it, and maybe in the editing, so editing is, I guess, where you would talk about that there could be the compromise, but there again, the compromise only comes to the different places I show it. So the art itself and what it is and what's meant to be is what it is. But that doesn't mean it can be shown everywhere.
Yeah.
For some of them. But that doesn't mean that the way I create my art is compromised in any way. So I've never done a commission. I don't think I could, because it just scares the heck out of me. But there again, the other reason I don't think I could is because it has to be, for one, I don't know. So, I mean, I guess it's weird because I don't feel like I could compromise to do a commission. And I don't feel like I compromise then to do my activist art. So saying that it's like cutting off your best limb, what was it?
Yeah, amputating the best limb you have as an artist or something.
Yeah. I don't know. That just seems really weird to me. When I first saw it, I was like, okay. And I'm like, no, I don't get it. No, I don't think that's cool. I don't think that's right. Because it seems like kind of a cop-out to me. And, I mean, I guess it depends how people create and how they decide to come about something. I mean, I guess I think it maybe depends how you create things. But I don't see my role... I don't think it's my responsibility to be an activist artist.
Yeah.
That's not my role. My role is, I want to call myself an artist. I don't think like it's my responsibility to be an artist, but like as an artist, I don't think it's my responsibility to be an activist. It's my choice to be an activist. I want to. It's important to me. I want my art to mean something. I want it to change the world. I mean, I guess when we talk about mortality and that kind of thing, and you're wanting something left behind, I guess I want to change things currently. So I don't really care either what happens to my art after. But it's important for me to have an effect, and sometimes that can be effect just a person. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the world and changing culture. But I kind of hope that I do fuck with culture. Like, I kind of do want to make a change there. But it can also just have an effect on one person, or it doesn't have to have a huge reach to me or to make a cultural shift, I guess. But that's more of the work that I choose to do, is hoping that I will affect change. But I don't feel it's my responsibility.
So then what about that quote? Did you say you didn't like them?
I don't like that he says that by using your art for, I wish we had it now to actually.
Well, he said that being responsible is the worst thing you could do, basically.
Yeah. So, but I don't think that's, what do you mean then? What do you mean? That's what I've been saying. I don't see what's wrong with being responsible. I just don't. Am I totally going against what I'm saying?
Well, I thought you said that you weren't responsible, right?
I don't feel, no, I don't feel it's my responsibility. I take that on. I don't feel it has to be. So I don't feel it's maybe it's more, I'm thinking identity. So my identity as an artist isn't as an activist.
Okay.
And it's also isn't my responsibility to be an activist. I choose.
I see what you're saying. So it's not your role inherently as an artist to be responsible, but when you choose to be responsible, you don't think it hurts you.
Right. I don't think it's taking away from my abilities as an artist.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
No, that makes sense now. I just didn't. I guess part of it is that. How we're defining or interpreting having a responsibility, right? Because when I say that my responsibility is just to myself and that's it, when I make what I call art, so capital A art for me, that's why I say other things, a commission for someone else, that's a whole different thing. I'm not, that doesn't fit into my definition of art. So, yeah, that's.
It's historically then it's changed, right? I mean, I think back, there was a time where it was a responsibility, literally the responsibility of an artist to chronicle history, even caveman days, I guess. There was somebody that had to draw on the walls to let people know what's going on. Or maybe that was decorative. I don't know. Maybe that was just an over-the-sofa picture. Who knows? But I mean, there has been that role of the artist to record history.
Yeah.
And then as technology changed and that sort of thing, and obviously that wasn't necessary, then the role of an artist has changed as well. But I don't know, I like being really selfish in my art as well. And I do make art that is just for me, that no one else sees, that I don't think anyone else is probably even very interested in. But I guess I kind of take umbrage, I guess, when he sort of, I felt was basically saying if you, I guess because I take umbrage that it's sort of less than to be making art, activist art, or to be making you know what it is? I sort of feel like it's someone who's saying it takes away from your artistic not even inspirations, but by doing something that's activist or doing something that means something else, you're taking away from this pure art form kind of thing, that it's sort of taking away from.
Well, it's just a really elitist thing.
Yeah.
I think is. See, when I heard it, to me, what I like about it was the fact that when I think of.
You probably like it because it's elitist.
Probably, yeah. But what I think of when he says responsibility or being responsible, meaning that having to, if you put yourself in a position where you're responsible to an audience, then it's oh no, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. I don't want to apologize for anything. Art related, when I'm making, if it is in a gallery somewhere and someone said, I don't know, for whatever that message is or whatever is happening, I never want to apologize. I don't want to be put in a position where it's yeah, I just don't want to be sorry for anything that I make. And if someone is agreeing to put it up somewhere or whatever, I'm that's Yeah, that's what it is. That's what you asked me for. Like, that's what I put, or you know who I am, you've seen the work, it's there, that's it. Like, if you don't want it, then whatever. But I'm not apologizing for it. I don't want to, I don't know. That's how I took it, is like being responsible to an audience, to somebody else, whoever that is, means that I'm put in a position where I might have to defend the work in a way where it's like, I have to apologize for my actions, and like that is, if I have to worry about that, to me the responsibility means a concern. I do not want to be concerned about anything I do ever. I want to do it, and that's it. And it's like, you want it, here you go. And if you don't, then you don't.
That's how I feel about my art too, though. I don't feel like I should have to apologize for anything I do.
Well, it's just the word responsibility,
compromise.
I guess. Then what is...
Maybe instead of responsibility, I think compromise. Like, to me, compromise is a really dirty word.
Yeah, but so when you talk about being responsible, then like what... When you say you choose to be responsible.
I know, so maybe responsible is the wrong word. I mean, okay, so maybe we need to unpack this. Okay, so what is responsibility then? So when I do work that I define myself as activist and feminist.
Yeah.
So when I do work that I consider that, I put it out into the world. I'm not putting it in activist places. I'm mostly just putting it out in the world, although I would absolutely put it in activist places. So I'm putting it out there hoping that it will create a cultural change, however small or large that might be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm hoping it will do. I don't feel a responsibility for anyone that might look at it or be offended by it or any of those things. Like, if, you know, so
let me ask you this then. What happens when you put it out into the world hoping, maybe not expecting, but intention and hope is that it will create change, it will challenge, it will create discussion, whatever.
Yeah.
What happens when it backfires? What happens if people take it and then use it against the argument? Whether it's, you know what I mean? They say, oh, this is supposed to be feminist, and this is doing the opposite. It's sending the opposite message, or an opposite group might take it and use it for their argument, and it's exactly the opposite of what your intention is.
I don't know. I haven't really had that happen yet. I've had people that didn't like it. I had my one piece that was all of the not fetish, but you know, with whips and chains.
Yeah.
Dominatrix. I had all the dominatrix stuff, so I had people who weren't taking it in the feminist maybe way that it was. They were more taking it either for exactly what it was or in a joking way, and I was fine with that. It's like, you don't have to be able, not everyone has to get it. But I haven't had it used against me badly, I guess. I haven't had anybody say...
the message shifted.
No. I mean, I've had people say they didn't like things. I didn't like things about my body or whatever. But I haven't ever had, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I haven't. I guess maybe I haven't had a backlash or anything like you've experienced. But I've had people not like it. And I've had people express that for sure. But that hasn't stopped me before. But I don't feel a responsibility for everyone who's female. I don't feel responsibility.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah.
Because we talked about before, like your work right now, the body of work that you've been working on for a long time, the older, fleshier body, female form, that using yourself to represent, like, you know that by using yourself, like you said, the personal being political, right? Mm-hmm. So saying like, hey, I'm putting myself out there, but you do represent anyone else who may look and or feel like you. Mm-hmm. So then, because you're aware of that, I guess so you were just kind of saying you don't feel responsible for anyone else that might be fitting into the group that you visually represent.
No, I wouldn't say I feel responsible for them. I don't know, maybe a little, maybe I'm trying not to. I do get people who only look at my photos from like a desire perspective, so they are not getting my art at all. And right now, probably that's most of my audience. So there is that, and I've just let that be, for lack of a better word, or that's part of the work, or whatever. But there's definitely, most of the people that are viewing my work right now are not viewing it from an art perspective, or not people who are going, it's going to cause a cultural change, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, so even though I'm creating this work for that, especially my audience currently, probably I'm not creating, but I still consider it feminist work.
Yeah. I think that, I don't know what.
I think I have a hard time figuring out this whole role, responsibility thing.
Yeah.
I think I'm having a hard time with that, figuring it out and figuring out like what is what. I think I don't feel like I think I don't feel like. Okay, let me start over. I don't think I have a responsibility to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, I don't have a responsibility to anyone. So, and when I create art, I create it with what I want to do. I don't feel like I don't feel like I can't just create work that is completely just sexual, and that it, unfortunately, not unfortunately, I don't know, because of who I am, it's going to be taken as feminist art anyway. But I mean, I could create whatever I want. Like, I don't feel like I have this responsibility to create feminist activist work.
Yeah.
But me as a person, that's what I choose to create and I want to create.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a responsibility, but it's a role I've taken. Is that kind of? I don't know.
Well, that's what we're figuring out, I guess.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things I thought that one of the people was saying was that they were talking about how, like, the artist is the social, or what was it? The conscience of a society, I think, something like that.
Yeah.
It was really strong. It was just like, is the social conscious or awareness or whatever, like, and I think that that's really, like I said, it's a really strong statement that I think is a little, elitist is the wrong word, but it's a little proud and high and mighty, and like, it's a little bit, like, I don't even know if that person was an artist, but.
Well, I think the reason that comes about, though, and so then it's like we've talked about art before, and using art, and so you use it within your writing, and so there's like writing and, you know, writing and art. What is the other sort of other, and music, right?
Yeah.
Those are kind of three of the ones that kind of go together, and I think those are, they kind of do define a conscience of our world and push and our activist and all those different things. And so those encompass a lot of different people and a lot of different groups, but I think they do kind of, that is what causes change. That is, it's through writing or through songs or through art. Like, it's certainly not by our politicians. Like, our politicians just do what we poke them, and like, until we poke them enough until they do it. Like, otherwise they just do, man, like, obviously we have politicians that are also socially conscious and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
but I don't know. I kind of think that our artists do that.
I think I figured it out.
Okay.
But I'm gonna try to get there chronologically. So
we'll
see what happens. We'll see what happens. Well, because I could just say it right now, but I'm gonna try to see if I can get there without, because then I have to backtrack and just be.
Just hang on, folks.
We don't have to hang on.
Why not?
Strap in.
Strap in. Okay.
I lost it now.
Oh no.
Okay, so I think that one of the things I was thinking earlier was like, okay, I felt at a time when I was like writing the article for the Sheaf.
Yeah.
And I was like, I feel not a responsibility to anyone but me, but I feel like I was representing a larger group of people that wanted the same things I wanted. And I felt like I was in a position to maybe have some change, because it's depending on who would see the article or whatever, to bring awareness to this subject that we want city space. Some people want to practice this art form legally. It doesn't, like, we don't really have that space. why don't we try this? Why don't we do this? Why does the city insist on doing this and doing that and whatever? So I felt, again, the responsibility, I don't want to use that word, but I felt like I took on, like as you said, a role, or I took on a position where I felt I was in power and I was able to do something that would be beneficial for more than just myself. Mm-hmm. The other people that I knew were on the same page as me, and I was the one doing the thing that may have been helpful. Yeah. So I don't want to say it was like holding the torch or whatever, leading, but it felt with that, just that one act, like, okay, I'm doing this thing that is.
And the act was the writing into the newspaper, or the act? Okay.
Yeah, that was the thing where I felt like, because there was a point too where I was like, you know what, like if I really want to change things, this is how it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's going to be by having conversations, by doing interviews, by writing, whatever. That's how things are going to change. Yeah. And I didn't do enough of that, and I wish I did more. But so that's one of those things I was thinking, and now see if I can get back. That's the problem with like going back and trying to do it chronologically. Where was I?
With the article.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So when that one guy in the video was saying like, oh, the artist is the social conscience of a society or whatever, like there's part of me that understands that as being like, okay, well, he's talking about that's the role of the artist, that's the responsibility is for them. Depending on how you want to interpret it, it's their responsibility to express. Mm-hmm. So let's say whatever that form is, you said music, writing, and obviously it could be dance, it could be so many different things. And it's like if you have those, let's just say they're talents that you are, however you want to look at talents, like you've been gifted and then you choose to develop those further. But if you've been given a talent, then some people would say it's your responsibility to use that talent, which is a whole other thing. But let's just say like, okay, you have grown that talent, you're an artist, you can do things that someone else can't do. So let's say there was like a crisis and there's a bunch of carpenters and they could help save people's homes or whatever. I don't have that same responsibility because I don't have those skills. So then it would be like someone else being like, yo, like our community is in trouble, like there was a flood, whatever, like you have the skills and abilities, it's your responsibility. And I think that if I was that person, if I was being whatever, if I wasn't wanting to share my time or whatever, then I might be like, it's not my responsibility is to me and my family and Stroff. Like that's a total response that I could understand. But I think like the context that this guy was saying and some of the people were, that I think that you have those skills and abilities, that it is your role within society to just, let's just say, just be expressive. So it's not in the fact that, oh, you need to be available for commissions, you need to be available to be decorative, to do design work. That's not the way that I take it, because a lot of those things don't fit into art for me. But the way that I'm twisting it now, where I came to this thing of like, oh, I think I got it, was like, it is my, like every artist's responsibility is to tell their story. That's, like if I could frame it in like one sentence, and that sounds really corny because I haven't played with the wording, but it is, and they're not just artists, I mean I think it's everyone's responsibility to tell their story in a way, but if someone has an ability to express something, like, I mean everyone's, visual artwork can be different too, right? And that will communicate to a different audience, because someone else will pay attention to an abstract differently than they would pay attention to a realist portrait or a graffiti or a photograph, whatever. So I think like in a way, my responsibility is just to myself. So my responsibility is just to be expressive, period. If I'm calling myself an artist, I need to express myself without compromise as much as I can. And I think that maybe that is like, yeah, don't do commissions, don't do things for other people, because you're not moving forward in what you should be, which is just expressing you, and that's it. And I think it's a really privileged position anyway, because I mean I have to take on.
Yeah. I was gonna say that's a very privileged place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where people will pay you just to be you and to express what you need to express, whether it's completely personal, whether it's art about art, or if it's insanely political, like But I think if I frame it in that context, I kind of agree where it's okay. The responsibility of the artist, or the role of an artist, is that they are representing. Like I know that I represent other people's feelings. I know that I connect, and that other people feel what I feel. But I'm the one visually representing it, and other people connect to it. And part of that, like if you want to frame it like as a more activist approach, then I mean, that might be, like I think back to like organizations that, for some reason, Black Panthers or something is the only thing that comes to my head, but like, I think that could be like a thing where it's like, hey, what can you do? How can you help us? You want to be part of this movement? What can you do? And therefore, it's like, hey, I'm a graphic designer. Okay, I'm an illustrator. Okay, you two make these things. Like that. In that approach, it's like, yeah, that is your responsibility because those are your skills and abilities. Use it for the movement. But I think the movement is ourselves. Like I think that again, expressing, because to me that's the most important thing about art is just the self-expression, like the effect they can have on you as an individual, and that's why I'm like, yeah, it's just, I just need to do it. I don't like leaving it for me only. I do it for myself, and I put it out there, and part of it is because I feel the need to connect with other people, so I'm not as feeling lonely or anxious or whatever, and feel comforted by the fact that other people can connect. I never feel responsibility to the people that I want to connect to. It's just still a responsibility to me. Again, I feel like I'm going off on this tangent, but I feel like that's the thing, is the responsibility is to tell your story in whatever way it is, in the most honest way you can possibly do it. So that's why when I say later on, again, when we talk about defining art, like the word compromise for me is in there, like I want to express things without compromise. That is what helps define art for me, is that it is my vision, my everything. We make compromises all the time, so that's a sticky word in my definition. Like we'll get to it because like I'm compromised by my finances. I'm compromised by my space that I can work in, the materials I use, all that stuff. Definitely, my time. I'm compromised by my ability to not make art 24/7 or whatever. So that's a sticky word, but it's more like if my intention and purpose is serving 100% what I want to express, that to me is the purest form of art. So that should be what everyone who calls himself an artist should aspire to create as much as possible.
Okay.
That's a lot.
No, okay. So I like the thing. So they're kind of our responsibility is to tell your own story. That's like a really Cole's Notes kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Like I was thinking about it when you were talking, and because, like I said, I don't feel that the art that I create, that I'm responsible for anybody or that kind of thing. And yet there's a complete difference between most of the art I create and the painting that I do in here. And so the painting that I do in here like has zero agenda, zero anything. And I haven't even figured out how it really even has anything to do with me. So it's something, and maybe it's because I haven't figured out my style yet, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm just trying everything, but I've had a hard time trying to sell it either, because, not trying to sell, I haven't tried to sell it, but like putting it out there, so it's a weird sort of thing. So I was trying, when you were talking, trying to figure out these two things, because I was painting, so it's a different role for me than my other art, which is a lot more performance photography based, video based. And so for some reason I have two completely different like feelings about those.
Well, because everything else that you may have done was based off of there will be an audience. Like like performance, you weren't performing in a, like if I think about it like a journal, like your paintings would be like writing a journal. No one else might see that.
Yeah.
But a lot of your activist work or feminist work or any of these other things that were performative or whatever were based off of like, some of them were directly interactive, in inviting someone to actually physically do things with the staging and the setup.
Yeah.
And some of it was just like, if no one were to see this, then what would it matter?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it is about audience. Yeah, completely. So I have no idea what that means and what that means as my role and responsibility, how that figures into painting. But I don't know. But I think that's completely true. And like we've talked about before, I'm really self-conscious of it and self-conscious of an audience with it. So
I think it's just the responsibility to yourself is what it comes down to again. Because even though, so the stuff that involved an audience, your responsibility was still to yourself and expressing what you did, but just that medium served a different purpose. And for some reason, the painting and writing, that you do is the responsibility is to just be expressive. The responsibility is to explore, to work things out for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, I think it's definitely more personal in a coping mechanism way, I think, to just like process. To do that external processing. Like, even if, but I'm saying, if no one sees it, right?
Yeah.
Like, then it serves a function for you.
Yeah.
And the responsibility is way more just about you than anything else.
But I have more anxiety over it. So how can I have more anxiety over some frickin' flicks of paint on a canvas than I have about standing nude somewhere and putting that picture all over the internet?
Well, is that how you felt the very first time you did it?
Yeah, yeah.
You felt fine.
I mean,
But
granted, it's been evolution, and I've been using my body for a long time.
I think I know what it is. Sorry
what?
to cut you off.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, because I don't really know what it is. I mean, as I had my own, like my other podcast, I was talking about how I was way more self-conscious of my body around my family too. So it's this weird, I don't know.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm glad that you I didn't completely cut you off because, well, even right there, that context, you were being responsible for, like, your family members. You're being responsible about, like, hey, right now I'm having a whatever time, and even though the personal is political, I mean, like, yeah, I can be out there in a G-string, whatever. It's like, maybe I won't because my little, like, 5-year-old nephew's around or something. So you're being responsible. So your personal is political has changed in that context. So you're.
But I wasn't being an artist in that context either.
But you always are. So no, I'm saying I think, like, I don't think that 100% of the time we need to be in that space. But the way I interpret your work of your body, you were using it all the time. You dress very purposefully. I'm not saying like you wake up in the morning, what am I going to do to like challenge people today? But your wardrobe naturally is built around the fact like this is what I want to do, and you're aware that that might challenge some people, and you don't care because it's not like you go out specifically walking in highly concentrated areas of people to challenge them and see what happens. Like, no, I'm just going to work. I'm just going to the studio. But I'm aware of what I'm doing, the way that I like to dress is challenging for some. So just on every day, you live that. But when you're put into a context with maybe family, you make it. I don't know if it's all just because people have looked weird, like looked at you funny, or you're afraid of that, or if it's because you're like, well, I don't want to have to explain this, or again, the context changes.
Yeah.
And to me, it's different than if you were going to a business meeting or something like that, because obviously you change what you might wear there for I don't know, but I think it does change because you generally are living. Because you use your body so much, even when it's not a photo, it's not a staged expression. It's like I am going out, like that one, like you said, you were kind of on board with some stuff, and then it was like, oh, she lost me. She was talking about how at the very end, where she said artists make special, and she said, well, now some people are called social practice artists, and they just say like, I'm just going out for a drink with friends, and we're calling that art because I declared that this is an event. But the thing is that every day for you. You live, like, again, the personal is political, the way that you decide to dress and carry yourself.
Yes, but the reason she lost me there is because she said she didn't necessarily consider that art. And I do consider that art.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's just because, like, I guess every moment there obviously is something of value, and I do feel things and deconstruct things, but I don't feel like every minute of my day is art or performance.
Yeah.
Although, like even today, like I'm wearing this short top, like the whole day, I'm like, I'm confident, this is fine, I'm going to pretend that no one's looking at me, and this is fine. And it's not, I'm like the whole time, I'm just like, oh my God, I just want to put my shirt down to my knees. So I'm not, and it was a mistake, it was a shirt. Anyway, so like I don't always do things necessarily on purpose. However, then the way I handle it is very purposeful.
Yeah.
I feel like I just lost it there, but I don't know.
The thing that I was thinking earlier as to why maybe, or again I had like this eureka moment.
Oh yeah, as to why.
Well, as to why like maybe why are you so self-conscious of this stuff?
Yeah.
Because the other stuff, like, okay, the writing and painting, even the painting's new, the writing's not. But I still think that common tie is maybe that, like, well, maybe I just think I love what I remember what I was going to say, but now I don't know if it is really an answer. With your performance pieces and activist pieces and stuff, the concept in and of itself, like, that is your conceptual art right there. Like, the way, you know what I mean? Like, a painting for you, the way you're working them isn't, I don't think, conceptual art.
No.
You're trying to aesthetically make something. Sometimes it's just a play. Sometimes you end up using your writing. There's a theme. There's a concept you're expressing, but it isn't conceptual art. I think that you're confident in your concepts. You're confident in the conceptual art that you express. And you're like, yeah, this is a thing. It's a strong statement. So you can do it. Whereas, even though your writing is beautiful and has strong statements, you're self-conscious of it because, like, what if someone picks apart my diction? What if, like, maybe I don't think you're concerned about punctuation, but I mean, like, what if it's not as it's not as subjective as other things could be. Because I think you can defend your concepts and know that people are going to disagree. The whole point is to challenge people. Whereas, like, I'm just playing with paint, I'm just expressing this concept, it's a personal thing. I don't think it's just the fact that it is personal. I think it's also the fact that it's not a conceptual art piece.
I think maybe you're right. So maybe in mine, instead of that whole idea of responsibility, is like, I don't think I feel a responsibility to tell my story even. Maybe I feel like I have maybe more of a compulsion to tell my story than a responsibility. I don't know, is that weird? Like,
I don't think it's weird. That word responsibility is so
know,
loaded,
maybe,
and I hate that word.
I know, maybe that's what it is I just don't like the word responsible, because I just don't want to, I don't want to be responsible for anyone either. Like, I hate when I have to be responsible for someone.
Yeah.
I really don't like it. I mean, I take on responsibility because I think it's important and all that flowery shit. But I don't like it at all, and I don't like the idea of having something that I love so much, having art, have it somehow have to be responsible. Yeah, I just don't like having, so maybe I just like role instead of and responsibility. Because I don't think artists should be responsible for anything. I think that we have roles and we have things that are really, really important to our culture and our society and our world and all of those things. But I don't think we have, you know, if you can dance really well, that you have a responsibility to make people, or if you're a good comedian, you have a responsibility to make people laugh. Like, I don't know. I think it's mean-spirited to make someone feel like that. Like, you should be responsible for this or that. I think we should want to. But unless you're a good carpenter, then you totally should look at houses when there's no.
Well, that's again, the word responsibility. I react to it almost aggressively because I'm like, no, don't make, like. And I think part of that is, like, art is something that, despite the fact that I share it, and that's part of what I need out of it, is to share it and have some interaction with it on some level. It's not like I'm counting likes and I feel better or worse about my art. Like, objectively, I'm like, yeah, this painting is amazing and no one liked it, and this other one everyone loves. I'm like, yeah, that's because it just coincidentally happens to be a certain color palette that I know people will like more and whatever. Anyway, but I think that it's. I lost the wording that I had, and it was like so there. Talking about how I didn't like, feeling, I don't want to be responsible to anyone but me, blah, 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 being selfish, etc. Because my art practice, and from the very beginning of writing, was a coping mechanism. It is a place where I had control, and I found freedom. And especially for me and anxiety, control is really important. And again, I knew that I had to give that up when I started exhibiting work, and some people reacted very strongly. Maybe I'll mention one of those instances, but it's the fact that, like, I don't want to give control. And then there comes compromise when you're if it's a commission, like again, that's compromise, so I'm not counting as art. If I'm exhibiting my art, I don't want to compromise then either, and at times I have to, and that's when like no, this is what I'm doing. If you don't like it, then whatever. But then you want to show the work, and then it's a whole other thing. But that's the thing. It's supposed to be a freeing thing. I don't want to think about any responsibility. I don't, you know. Sometimes it's not meant to be offensive or challenging, but it might be. And if someone reacts a certain way, like if I use my own blood in my work, I don't. The fact that someone might make a face at that or whatever, I don't want to. I don't want to have to explain it. I don't want to. I'm like, okay, whatever. Yeah.
So you don't. The responsibility part. So this doesn't go on the role and responsibility, but does it hurt you if people don't like your work?
No.
Does it hurt your feelings?
No, I don't like when. I don't like when someone misinterprets the work when it's a strong concept, and that hasn't happened for a while because I haven't been making exhibitions. Like there was some social commentary stuff, like I said. So okay, the examples I'm thinking of, which I should have just brought up a long time ago, but it's creating a body of work that dealt with consent. So it was very ambiguous on purpose. So I had a lot of figures, female figures only. There was never another figure in a piece. I can't even think of titles right now, but they I can't even remember the name of the exhibitions now, because there was a couple of them that were like the same theme, and then the titles changed a little bit. I can't remember the name of the title of the exhibition right now. Anyway, so for me, because it was an exhibition with a partner, they had similar themes, whatever. But the thing was, again, to me, to challenge someone's view of what is happening here. So there was some of them had like women duct taped and tied up to like chairs. That's all that there was, though. And I remember one of the titles was soft. That was it, right? There's no context of if the participant is willing, because some people, that's what they want to participate in very willingly, and that's a desire that they have, and other people, obviously, maybe in that situation, it's a dangerous situation, and there's no consent, and that's not where they want to be, right? And so some people, even students, when we were doing critiques, there was one middle-aged woman that ended up talking about how, like, it disturbed her, and that her interpretation immediately wasn't even a question. She wasn't even asking me. She was just saying, like, how this is, like, rapey. And I was like, hey, well, that's part, like, in that instance, I knew that it was, the whole point was that it was ambiguous. And then it was exploring the fact that people are bringing their own personal histories to the work. Therefore, they're interpreting it differently. However, there's two things that happened, and one was, for some reason I didn't foresee it, someone wrote a note, left it on the artist statement, which is weird because I'm like, if you read the artist statement, how could you leave the note? And it said that I was being misogynistic. It said the work was misogynistic. And it said something about decapitations and stuff, and that wasn't a thing. I completely understood. There's one work that has, it's just a face with hands like underneath, and the thing is that they have duct tape over their mouth, they're looking up. There's nail polish splattered all over the place. There was silver nail polish that splattered around the neck area. And I was like, that I think is what they were referencing with the decapitating women thing. And I was like, yeah, that's not what it was intended, and I never even saw that until they said it. Another, in a different venue, it was at a very like sex positive, well, I mean, inherently I think that a lot of like sex shops are sex positive, but it was a place called Positive Passions. It was a very like progressive forward space that was not just about like selling sexual equipment or stuff like that, but there was yoga there was like therapy. It was a really great space. But some of those, again, one of those pieces, they had it like right in the entranceway, where there was a receptionist that was sitting in that space every day. After the work was there for a couple of days, we got a call saying that they wanted to move it to a different room because it was disturbing that person. That upset me too. And then I had to learn, like, hey, well, it upset me because we arranged it the way we wanted it. And then they took control. Like, an audience member should not be having control of how my exhibition is being expressed.
If she has to sit there every day and look at it.
Yeah, but to me, that's the thing then. Like, then, if I was in a position of power, in a very privileged position where I could show wherever I wanted to, I would be like, take it out. Gone. You've lost your privilege of having my art. Like, that's how I would feel. Obviously, I'm not in that position now.
Well, that's so rude. That's so
Why
rude
is
of you. Because you're not being, you do have a responsibility in a way.
I don't think I do. That's the thing.
But okay, just as a person, just as a person, if someone was feeling so upset about that, someone who works in a sex shop, so obviously is an open individual, if they're having a problem looking at something, if it bothers them, then that must mean that you never know, they could have been raped, they could have been bound without their consent, they could have all kinds of things that are going on. So if they request, it's not like they even went and removed it, they requested that you move it, that's a pretty easy, come on, don't be.
But it's the principle of it, and that's the thing. I don't
quit being all principle about it. If somebody's there and it's bothering them, don't be all principally about it.
But why? Then that is an instance where I was like, I don't have any responsibility to you or whatever. I don't think it was
responsibility to another human.
No.
Yeah, you do.
This is why I don't want kids.
Well, I don't want them either. But still, I have a responsibility to be nice to people.
That's not the reason I don't want kids. But it's part of it because I'm selfish, I want to be responsible to me and whoever I choose to be responsible for. Thus, the people that I care about, I need to do a better job of expressing myself in a way that will keep them in my life, which is not altruistic. It's really about me still. I like that person, I want them to, whatever. The point is...
going way on too.
Okay, anyway,
Who gives a shit?
is that I don't fault that individual. It's the fact that I'm like, the person that saw our work was the person who owned the store.
Mm-hmm.
They took on the responsibility of having my work in there. I shouldn't have any responsibility. They took on the responsibility to say, we like the work, we see the work, we understand the work, they had the artist statement, they said, yeah, put it wherever you want. That was the verbal contract, that was what I signed up for. So therefore, I was like, hey, it's done. I don't want to have to come back and rearrange things because someone's uncomfortable. You should have communicated with your staff, whatever. That was her responsibility, not my responsibility. That's the thing. Like, I know that it's a stupid sticking point of principle or whatever, but to me, that's not part of what my role was. My role was to supply this work in the way that I wanted it, to express my vision. Now, did it really matter if that piece was in a different room? For that exhibition, it didn't matter. No, but I let someone control my exhibition, and I don't like that.
I mean, it's different if it was just somebody walking in who didn't like it.
But
it's different. Well, to me it is, because it's someone who has to sit and look at it every single day. She's sitting in the same spot, having to look at it every single day. And if it bothers that person, why would I want to keep my principles and have somebody feeling bad just so that my artwork was there? Now that takes away principle to me, because now I don't mind having something that makes someone uncomfortable, but if it makes someone that uncomfortable, then why wouldn't I want it in a different room where maybe they just pass it by and it doesn't bother them as much? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I just would never want to have a piece if it's in a gallery and someone has the choice to be able to walk out. They don't like it, they can walk out. No big deal. She works there, she doesn't have the choice. So to me, it's a reasonable request to ask you to move it to a different room. Not to say you need to get out of here, not to say anything else. It's a pretty reasonable thing to say, I sit there and look at it every day, and for some reason in my history, in my whatever, it's hard for me to look at it. That's a pretty reasonable request. But
from the individual? Or the person who asked me, she didn't ask me to put it up, it was someone else. Like, the agreement wasn't with her, the agreement was... Yeah. Okay, so that was my bad. I didn't charge the GoPro 100%. I thought it was good for like a little over an hour, and it wasn't, so... however, I can pick up where we left off really quickly, because I think I figured something out in the 10 minutes that we're kind of resetting things back up.
That's good, because I have no idea where we were.
Okay, so I was in the middle, we were like right in the thick of it, because I was saying that like, I don't want to be responsible, whatever. So you were talking about on a human level about like, oh, just why can't you just be like responsible or understand that you have responsibility to fellow humans, etc. And my whole thing was this thing of principle and whatever else. So I think that part of this is kind of something I think I hinted at earlier about like part of the not role, not responsibility, part of the privilege of even defining yourself as an artist to me is that it could give you a license to not have responsibility, which like for anybody, which is what I like about it because I don't want to be responsible to anybody. So that's not saying that that's right or that's good.
That's fine unless you're exhibiting.
That doesn't make any,
you just make art at home and you just like go do it, la la la. But no, if you're going to exhibit it, then you have responsibility. Whether, maybe not responsibility, but you are going to, get reactions. And then, so that business owner took, and this is the same thing that could happen in a gallery. It happened in a gallery with your students. So that business owner came to you and said, would you move it, I'm assuming, because this is bothering so-and-so. So she's the one who is responsible for the work being there. So she's the one that had the responsibility. She then put on you, and you had the responsibility or whatever to say, I'm pulling the whole thing.
I had a choice.
Right. So, I mean, like really, it's when you make the art, unless you want to never ever exhibit it, then you're going to have some, if responsibility isn't the right word, then there's some word.
Compromise? To me?
Well, perhaps, maybe, but like hopefully never, because whoever, like you say, sees and accepts your work and whatever, then hopefully it's not going to change. But if it does and something happens, then yeah, you have the choice to either compromise or pull all your work out then.
The compromise, what happened at the beginning is what is ideal. Is like, hey, if there is any compromise that needs to be made, I need to know that in advance. Like,
but how can everyone know everything? How could
that's
she
her
know
responsibility.
that? So she should have gone around and said, here's the entire list of all of the things that should be shown. You can never do that. You can, just like you can't in a gallery too. And a gallery there are some public galleries that then there are some responsibilities they have.
And I just don't think, to me that is what cheapens the art in that context. If it's like, well, and
sometimes I think, no, I understand that.
Yeah.
And also sometimes I think it's just completely wrong, like absolutely straight up wrong. But it is, in that instance I don't. In that instance, I agree with the store owner. I would have done the same thing. I would have said, can you please move it? Because this woman is sitting there staring at it the whole time. And it's bothering her. It's different if she just like would walk back and forth all the time. But she's sitting there, it's right in her sight. It's kind of different. But anyways.
I don't know. I just find like I know that part of it is going to be me being like a bag of crap or like just trashy or garbage because I'm like, yeah, well, no, it did not affect like it being in a different room didn't affect anything other than the aesthetic flow. It didn't change the concept, so it should have been just fine, and I could have been like,
aesthetic
yeah, okay.
flow is important though. Like I certainly don't mean to discount that. It is.
But yeah, it's just the fact of again, if it was at the very beginning, they said, oh, these ones are more challenging, maybe we'll have them in this room. Because there was like 2 different hallways and one, not private room, but it was a room that people would use for whatever. So if anyone just walked in off the street into the one hallway, that's all that they could see. So maybe if they said at the very beginning, I probably still wouldn't have liked it, but I would have known at the beginning and I would have chosen at that point whether I wanted to be a part of it or not.
Yeah, fair enough.
So if someone wanted to change it after I've committed and whatever, that bothers me. But again, I think it comes down to, and something I learned about myself by talking about it and thinking about it, is that what I mentioned before, that for me the creation of art is freeing, it was a coping mechanism, etc. Also plays into this sense of control. I want to have a control over my creation. I know I don't have a control on how someone thinks about it, how they feel about it. The fact that she felt so strongly in some ways could be a compliment. It could be someone is reacting strongly to the work. That means I expressed something in a way that someone felt something. Great. The fact that the fact that she took control over the work upset me to a degree which it may not upset anyone else or whatever. But like I said, it's almost like it gives me license to be anything, whether it's beautiful or hateful. like I said, I don't want to have, like, when I'm, like, and that's the thing, that I identify with being an artist so strongly that it's concerning, because I feel like, yeah, that gives me a lot, like, I don't walk down the street, like, pushing people in the face, and be like, oh, I'm an artist, you can, like, get out of my way. But I mean, like, I don't want to have any responsibility for those things. Like, yes, I need to be responsible for my actions, but if I'm using the label or role of an artist to be, I am expressing myself, that is it, and I don't feel like it's at the expense of someone else directly, because I don't want to physically start harming people and call it art, or like, I mean, because you could be a terrorist and be like, this was an exercise in art. You need to wake up. You need to get, well, like, you know what I mean? That could be a thing. I mean, the first episode of Black Mirror.
The difference is you don't have to make any compromises. You're not responsible for anyone for your art. When you want to exhibit it, or when it comes into the public realm, is when it doesn't mean you have to make any compromises. You decide whether you want to or not, but that is when you are going to have responsibility for what you've created.
Yeah, and I don't want to have it ever. But I know that that's the thing. Entering the gallery space, you're already compromising. This is a space that is not my space. I need to figure out how I can work within that space. So two things that makes me think of is that, one, when I did my BFA exhibition, I had broken glass. I wanted it on the floor. Now, the gallery manager for, I can't think of the title right now, was so cool with it. I didn't have to put up, I was like, do we have to put up like a little thing? Because what if kids walk up to it and try to pick it up? We didn't have to do anything. It was amazing. I love that. Because if I had put up like a little barricade or a little, like, you have to stay behind this line, to me, it would have disrupted it. Mainly because it was on the floor, so it's more of an eyesight thing. If it was up on the wall and you had to stand behind a barricade, it wouldn't matter as much. But the fact that that was there and it was an element of danger or whatever else was part of the work. So not compromising that was great. If I had to compromise it, I wouldn't have been as enthusiastic about showing it. The other thing that reminds me was when we watched that little thing, Gatz talked about how it's art because it is vandalism. He was saying that for him, the act of creating the Gatz, it was an acronym for graffiti against the system. Most of his stuff is characters and facial expressions. But he was saying, like, the fact that he wasn't just talking about his work, but he said the fact, or the act of vandalizing things is what gave messages power. It was the fact that someone is saying, I don't have permission to do this and I'm doing it, is what made it art. He said if it was with permission, like, it wouldn't be art. It is art because it is vandalism.
Well, I have to admit that I know at the university they put a graffiti wall, and it's just the lamest thing I think I've ever seen in my life. It's just, I don't understand. For one thing, like, to me, like, legal graffiti just seems weird. I mean, we've talked about it, have a better understanding now why it is good to have a wall, but it's just like, it just seems so, like, ridiculous to me. And so, I kind of, I guess I kind of understand what Gatz is saying in a way, but kind of not. I mean, I appreciate when you were saying when you were doing graffiti and it was only on city buildings, not private buildings, because that's one of the things. I live in a heritage building, or I mean, I have my shop in a heritage building. Yeah. And someone came in and just tagged it. Like, at least put, like, some good stuff. Don't put your masturbatory scribbling on there. Ugh, just drives me nuts. Anyways.
That'll be a topic for another time.
Another topic for another time. But anyways, so I don't think just because something's illegal it makes it art.
No, but he was saying,
I can see the value definitely in that, right?
Well, I mean, they took it further and even said, like, voice of the people, and, like, that you don't have, I think we talked before about privilege, and that's something they said too, like, we can't take up and rent a billboard. Mm-hmm. So we'll go over top of it. Mm-hmm. Because our voices should still be heard. And so, and it's in that act, that being a political act or a personal is political or whatever, like, it can be strong. I don't think everything that is illegal is art, because to me, graffiti is nothing to do with legality at all, which again is a topic for another time, but to me, that does not define what graffiti is. It's an art form, whether it's on paper or on a wall illegally, or on canvas in a gallery. But I don't know, I just thought that was like, when he said that, the first time I saw it, I was like, oh snap, I get it now. Within a certain context, I get why that makes it art, because it becomes conceptual.
Mm-hmm.
Because then it's conceptual saying, no, I'm doing it very purposefully on this thing,
Right.
because I don't have permission to do it on this thing. For
And
whatever.
that is what makes it, well, it's what gives it its power, maybe more
Yeah.
than makes it art.
Well, and I think that's maybe how he was defining what is art and what's not, is maybe because it had to have a conceptual quality, or a powerful quality.
Mm. Okay, so what's your role or responsibility as an artist? Zippola zero zot, right?
It's to me, yeah.
It's to you.
My role
it's to you,
is,
and it's to tell your story.
yeah, my role is to be expressive, to live and express my understandings, my findings. I don't know, I use art to help me understand things and discover myself, and also just for fun, and also for like, yeah, it's just, yeah, my role and responsibility is just to me personally, and I don't, yeah.
I just came to something, I think I do feel responsibility. I just realized it because I was like, oh, okay, da, 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 da. And I was like, frick, I think I do feel responsibility. I think I feel responsibility to do the type of art I do because I do have confidence comparatively anyways. I always think I'm not that confident, but I can pull it off, and I guess that's what confidence is. So I think I do feel some responsibility to do certain things because I have confidence and guts and organization to pull it off, and so it's important to put it out there. So maybe I do feel some responsibility because I can. However, when I'm creating and what I create and all of those, I don't sort of go, oh, so should I do it this way, should I do that, should I do it? It's completely and aesthetically what I want and that sort of thing. And I guess I wouldn't feel like, but I guess that is a responsibility I do feel. So now, as an artist, part of the responsibility I do feel that I have come to is it because I can say this, that I am in a place of relative privilege. I don't have a job that like stops me from being able to do this. So I have that space of privilege of being able to put my body out there. So maybe there is that does feel a little bit of responsibility to also make sure that the art is out there and seen and is representative. But I don't feel like I have to. So if that's what responsibility means.
You choose, like you said before, you choose to have responsibility.
Yeah.
You choose to put yourself in a role of responsibility.
Yeah.
And I rail against it as much as possible, which is
right.
Unsuccessful at times, but it's just like any restriction to me is so, any restriction that I don't place on myself.
Is different. See, well, I don't feel like I restrict myself.
I think responsibility is restriction though.
I know, well, isn't that's what Cronenberg was saying, but I guess I'm saying I don't necessarily agree with that. Like,
okay, okay, earlier today you said like you put on this shirt when you left the house and you didn't like test it properly whether or not like if you raised your arm how much your midriff would show, right?
Yeah.
So when you were out and you realized it, you were like, oh crap. You didn't run home and get another shirt. You didn't, and other people might have. You specifically said earlier in this podcast how you needed to keep it on. You said, I'll get through it. I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And you did that. You were probably thinking on a very personal level, but what you just said to me now makes it sound like it was more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you said you could face it. Mm-hmm. You can deal with it. So you will do it because it will challenge people. And you're like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to, I'm uncomfortable. But I'm going to, in the face of my own discomfort, continue to challenge other people. And you're challenging yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's restricting like your comfort.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And I guess, but that is a choice you made yourself.
It is,
and for me, I hate any type of restriction unless I make it myself. So like I do restrict myself. I believe that I need to have rules and whatever for myself, but it needs to be me. If anyone else is imposing anything on me, I have, for a lot of the time, an immediate reaction of like recoil.
Me too. No, I'm like that too. Like if someone tries to tell me to do something or not, or if someone told me like my picture couldn't be here or had to be this way or that way, I probably would be somebody who would pull it. Like, so I do not like being told what to do. If someone told me I had to change my shirt because my midriff was showing, then like shit would have went down. Like so if any, like I don't like being told what to do, so if I choose to do it, then I'll do it. But I mean, so I'm very much of the same school. Like, I don't like try. As soon as someone tries to tell me to do something, I will like do it other way to sideways.
I don't go that far. I just don't.
Oh, I do.
To me, it's not like I said. I recoil in the fact that I don't like it. So but I'm not going to be doing the opposite just to spite someone either.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing, what if someone was telling you, if they were supporting you, but by saying like, yeah, like I'm glad you did that. You need to do that because you can.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that. I don't think.
Yeah.
And I feel very uncomfortable with being. I do get told that like, oh, you know, you're an inspiration, keep on or whatever. And I feel very uncomfortable with that because I don't like the responsibility, right? And so if you're an inspiration, just as bad as if you're some other kind of responsibility, there was a period of time where it affected my work, and then I decided to let it go. Like, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and if it inspires some, great. If it turns other people off, fine. Yeah. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. So that has sort of happened where there kind of was an expectation, or there was a and so I sort of had to consciously think about things and see how I want to handle that. But yeah, I think I know my work does affect others. I know that it is feminist and activist, but if that was the only reason I was doing it, then I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I would choose another way to be activist. I want to create change, so I would definitely find a different way, and there are other ways I do, but that wouldn't be the only reason I create art.
And I think something I thought of way earlier and didn't bring up, and I now just needing to say it, I think that I probably struggle with the concept more than I am expressing, because if I was in a position, like, I like talking about my work, but I don't want to have to. So maybe I'm not struggling with it. I like to do it sometimes, but other times I'm like, I don't want to have to explain this. Just look at it. Yeah. But like, it's just maybe it's not a struggle. Yeah, it's just another thing of like, oh, should you be responsible to explain it? It's like, there's my artist statement. You read it. I don't want to talk about it anymore. And other times I'm like really happy to talk about stuff. I think my last thought, which I just is we've been thinking of a way to sign off the podcast. I'm not saying this is this. It all just came together in my mind. It was like, be responsible for yourself. That's the artist life. To me, I'm not saying that's a sign off thing, but to me, I was like, that is like that. Again, for me, what I appreciate and value and love about being an artist is the freedom that I feel. So, and that's being responsible to myself. And that means a lot of things. Taking care of myself, like mental health and all that stuff that I get from my art. But there's times I can be self-destructive with my art too. So.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel that way. I don't know, because sometimes it's like I don't know. It's a struggle.
Yeah. That's the
artist life.
It's a struggle. That's the artist life.